I'm focused. I've been watching for the omens. I've been listening to everything you said. It's been running through my head, locked and loaded. I got the feeling that you know it. Yeah, I've only just begun. I won't stop until it's done, till you're broken. So welcome to the fire. I'm the one with the light. See the fire through your face as we're walking through the flames, getting higher. Harder they fall.
Well, good morning, everyone. Hey, my name is Rick Curtis, and I'm so glad you could join me on this live stream today. Hey, we're going to talk about conflict resolution. This is the first of two parts, and I'm so glad that you're joining me today. Hey, learning outcomes are simple today. Listen, let me tell you a little bit about my philosophy. I believe that, and you saw in the header that I was running, there's a subheader, Leadership Simplified. I believe too often we go to conferences and we hear 150 different things and we don't know what to take away because it's just an inundation of facts. I try to keep these short, between 30 and 45 minutes, with one simple takeaway. You might receive various nuances of that, but at the same time, just one takeaway can really help us in our leadership, bring our leadership to the next level. So learning outcomes today are very simple. One sentence. I want you to remember and memorize, commit to memory, safe, humble leaders listen for the win. And if you're new to my live streams, you'll know that you won't know. Those that are not new will know. I always put an email address down in the bottom corner, and that email address is very specific. That it's worksheet.cr01@curtis.net. That is the handout for this live stream. How that works is if you'll send an email to that email address, you don't have to even put any content in the email. You just send that email and it will respond immediately or within a minute or so with a PDF file, a link to the PDF file, which is the handout for this live stream. And then it'll also reference any references that I make during the presentation. For example, if I reference a book or something like that, so you don't have to write it down while you're watching the live stream, those will all come to you via email. So all you have to do is send an email there. Again, our learning outcome today, one simple sentence. I want you to commit it to memory. Safe, humble leaders listen for the win. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started with the word safe. All right. And so let me say this. Too often in leadership, you come into conflict in the immediate, and that is something that really needs to be addressed here. Now, again, the intro was a little bit domestic for the course here because we're talking about really an organizational environment where we find conflict, and that was a kind of a domestic intro. But it does get intention as I start this live stream, so we kind of keep that intro in there. But remember, the learning outcome today is simple. Safe, humble leaders listen for the win. And so the first part of that is safe, the word safe. Now, I want to contrast two methods or two scenarios in which conflict resolution is necessary. There's certain times organizationally where you find that there's someone, a contrarian, we're going to call them the contrarian, and they're causing trouble or they're causing conflict or they want to confront you about something in the organization. And so in most situations, we have time to plan, right? And this sentence is no less valid there, right? We can think through safe, humble leaders listen for the win. But we have time in those situations where we can schedule a sit down with that person, with the contrarian. We can sit and say, hey, let's get together next week. Let's go to lunch. Let's talk through these issues. Meet me in my office, however you design that meeting, and we have time. But this also serves in the situation where conflict comes out of the blue. It comes right before some event, or you're getting ready to speak and someone comes up to you right before that and expresses some discontent, or it's just a confrontation. The guy's walking across the parking lot and you can see it coming. I learned early on in my own leadership journey that I was prepared for the first, but not for the second. In other words, I was prepared when I had time to think through the conflict. I could ask the questions. Hey, what's this person going to confront me about? How can I work through that situation, pre-prepare some reactions and some information and whatever to help in that conflict resolution moment. However, I was ill-equipped to face the guy walking across the parking lot, right? And early on in my leadership, I made things worse sometimes because I wasn't prepared, and I came on the defensive. So I recognized some 20 years ago that I needed something that I could easily remember. And here's your outcome. Something I could easily remember that would help me in those moments to not blow things up even worse. Safe, humble leaders listen for the win. All right, so let's talk about that. Safe. The first question you need to ask is, am I setting the environment properly? I mean, I need to set the environment for safety. What is the best location? Now, again, we're talking about two contrasting situations. One that's very planned and organized, and one that's confrontational, say in a parking lot or something like that, or in the office place or something like that. Is this the best location, right? We always want to make the environment safe. So is this the best location? Maybe if this is a public thing, you've got other members of your organization around, you've got children around, who knows? Your family's with you. In those situations, in the immediate, you need to ask the question, is this the best location? And you might say to the contrarian, hey, can we move this off to this, or can we reschedule this to my office, or can we step outside in the hallway? What are the best next steps to make it safe? Remember, if you've committed this sentence to memory, this will come to you. Safe, humble leaders listen for the win. Okay, so is this the best location? And then the next question you're thinking through is, what one or two sentences can you say to put an individual at ease? Look, safety goes both ways in both scenarios, right? When you plan a confrontational time, or when you're blindsided by a confrontation, safety is paramount. So you have to ask the question, am I safe? What's the safety here? And the responsibility of the leader, am I making it safe for this other individual, for the contrarian? So let's take the first scenario where this is a planned confrontation. Maybe it's planned because you've planned it and you've got a person, an employee, a direct report, somebody that is a volunteer in your organization, and you want to improve their skill set, and you're considering maybe even getting rid of them, but you really want to commit to making them better first before you take that step. So what one or two sentences can you say to put that person at ease? I know, as I've been a supervisor many times over the years, and as a business owner years ago, I would always lead with, hey, John, listen, I want you to know that we need to talk about some heavy stuff here, but you're not losing your job. Okay, that's one way to make it safe, right? You jump to the end of the conversation to ease the transition time into the conversation. Let me ask you this, how many times have you confronted somebody about something, or you've gone into a situation that was tense and you try to soft package it up to the conclusion, right? You're not doing anybody any favors, because as the leader, you're coming in with authority, and that person is thinking, am I getting fired? Am I being asked to leave the organization? Am I losing some benefit? So with that person thinking about those things, they're not hearing a word you're saying. You're like that teacher in the Charlie Brown, it's just rant, 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 and they don't hear anything because they're trying to guess your motives. As a leader, and to create a safe environment where the person can hear what you have to say, you need to jump forward to the conclusion, set it, and then backfill that information later. This goes so far in conflict mitigation and conflict resolution. So, hey, John, listen, you're a valuable part of this team, and we've got some heavy stuff to talk about right now, but I need you to know that I expect you to retain your authority. I expect you to be part of this organization into the future. This is not a termination. This is a correction. I want you to know that you're safe here. And then you can backfill that. So that way you're freeing them to hear the things that you have to say. And so this goes a long way in conflict resolution. And then again, under the premise of safety, create mutual purpose. Why are you having this conversation, right? You need to cut to the chase. Yeah, as a leader, you need to communicate in such a way that people aren't having to put pieces together. They're not having to think about what you're trying to get to. A lot of us do that in our leadership. We try to build up. We build the case before we bring the conclusion. In most cases, in fact, I would say probably all cases, we need to state the purpose. We need to state the reason. That way we free them in their thinking to hear the words that follow. So why are you having this conversation? Hey, John, you're a valuable member of this team. I want you to play a significant role, but we have to cover these things first. All right. So that sets the purpose, if you will. It creates mutual purpose. Now, organizationally, there's something you need to realize, right? We all have our individual goals. As the leader, you have your goals. And as a person in the organization, as a direct report or a volunteer or a member, that person has their goals. And we need to consider those as we come to a confrontation. And when I say confrontation, I don't always mean take the heat out of it, right? Confrontation is just a meeting in which inequity or a divide can be reconciled and brought closer in alignment and move from misalignment to alignment. So do you care about their goals? You got to ask yourself that question. Do I care about their goals? And then do they care about my goals? But ultimately the question is, does the organization trump everything? And yes, it always does, because the reason you're the leader is you're leading that goal, that you're leading that organization into the future. So you need to ask yourself, even with yourself, do my goals align themselves with the ultimate goals of the organization? Because that's where conflict comes in, right? In misalignment. So you've got the organization at the top. You've got you as the leader underneath, which submits your goals to the leader, to the organizational goals. And then you've got your direct reports, your volunteers, your employees, whatever it is underneath you. And if their goals aren't in alignment with your goals or alignment with the organizational goals, then that really, honestly, between you and I, that's a communication problem. You need to work on your communication. But again, you're stating the goals so that way you make it safe. So even that, you kind of actually build what I'm going to talk about here shortly is mutual purpose. You build a mutual purpose with the contrarian in that you submit both of your goals to the organizational goals. So you can say to them, hey, John, listen, I know you've got goals for yourself, and that's great. I want to empower you. I want you to help you along with those goals, but those goals need to subject themselves to the organizational goals if it's going to work in this organization. But John, let me tell you, I have my own personal goals, but I always, when I have my organizational hat on, I submit those goals to the ultimate organizational goals because they have to be in alignment. Otherwise they're not. Because if we're out of alignment, then this conflict arises out of that. So you're creating mutual purpose. And then what you want to do is you want to have mutual respect. Listen, you and I both know if disrespect enters into the dialogue, then it's over. It ends the dialogue. You can't drive it personally. You can't make it personal. You can't attack someone's character. You can't say you always or you never. You have to have a respectful dialogue. If it's going to be a safe dialogue, then it has to be respectful. And that kind of brings us right into the next point, which is humility. Mutual respect begins with humility. But first, let me give you a couple resources, because this word safe, really, this first word of the sentence, safe, humble leaders, listen for the win. Now, I'm going to say that a lot during this presentation because I want you to commit it to memory. Safe, humble leaders, listen for the win. So that first part of safe is very well documented in this resource that I'm about to show you. There's actually two, but the first is Crucial Conversations by Kerry Patterson. He's the lead author there. And then you see Crucial Confrontations there as well. Two great books for every leader to have in their library. So I encourage you to get those books. Listen, if you sent the email for the handout, you don't have to write that down because all that information is there in the email that you received back. But I encourage you as a leader, read it. If you have to prioritize, I did it graphically here. If you have to prioritize, read Crucial Conversations first and then Crucial Confrontations. Conversations is an amazing book, deals with creating that mutual purpose, making the environment safe, and leading out when stakes are high. All right, so that's that. Now let's move on to being humble, because as a leader, humility is important. External perceptions are important. I want you to ask yourself this, right? Where does the other party, where does the contrarian see you on the humble to arrogant spectrum? You're a leader. And so most leaders are, that A-type personality. In fact, on the DISC profile, we're usually D's or I's. I'm personally a high D with a sub-high I. And so we're decision makers. We're drivers. We want to drive things forward. And that kind of what's been called an A personality really can be perceived as arrogant. You can be the most humble leader there is, but because you're a decisive person and you're driven and you're making things happen, you can be seen as arrogant. That's not your fault necessarily. Now you can take steps to change that perception. But one thing I want to challenge you with something. Do an anonymous study about your own, because EQ is important. If you've not looked at my live stream on emotional intelligence, you'll have to dig that out because I think it would be of value to you. But self-awareness and relational awareness are two of the four aspects of emotional intelligence that play in here, and they're very, very important. You need to know how people perceive you, right? And because your ideas of yourself may be totally different than others. It took me a lot of years to realize that everyone didn't like Rick, right? I even people that I saw my jovial side of my personality, there are personality types that just don't mesh together. And you can be loved by 99 people in a room, and one person can see those same actions, those same attitudes, and take that and say, I would not hang out with that guy if he's the last guy on earth. So I know for a fact everyone doesn't like Rick. And that doesn't break my heart. I just realized that is the truth. People perceive me differently, and people perceive you differently. You have 10 people in the room. Trust me, you've probably got 11 opinions about who you are. So here's what I've encouraged leaders to do, and it takes a little bit of humility to do it, but it's important, is to conduct a survey. And it could just be that one question. And I would do it anonymously. You can do it with an online form, or if you want really kind of a double anonymous thing, do an online form that you select 10 of your top leaders, do an online form and let those go to another person that then gives you the results. So you've got that double list of anonymity because you want your participants to feel like it's completely anonymous study. And then ask the question, where do you place me as your leader on the the humble to arrogant scale? Humble being 1, arrogant being 10. Where do you see me? And that might be a wake-up call to you. You might see a pattern. You might not see a pattern. No pattern says that different people perceive you different ways. You see a pattern. That may be something that you need to be aware of, and you need to adjust the way you act in order to mitigate those perceptions of you. Okay. And then what can you do in the immediate to mitigate unhelpful perspectives? So we're talking about the confrontation, right? The conflict resolution. What can you do to mitigate unhelpful perspective? Hey, John, listen, I know I need to apologize to you. I'm a pretty driven guy, and sometimes I can just kind of step on people because I'm moving forward all the time. And if I've ever done that to you, I'm really sorry. I ask your forgiveness for that. But see, you're taking a humble stance, and you're saying, I'm willing to mitigate whatever perceptions you have of me that really aren't true, because I do understand as a leader that sometimes decisiveness looks different than to other people. And so I just want to come humbly and say, I'm doing the best I can for this organization, and I need your voice to speak in. I need you to help me as we move forward together. Safe. You've created a safe environment, and now you've showing yourself as being humble and ready to listen. Let me tell you how that benefits you, because this is important and significant. As you consider internal perceptions, you need to ask yourself these questions. What am I willing to learn, right? What are you willing to learn as the leader? Because much conflict comes from concern. Look, I'm not going to discount the wolf in sheep's clothing, right? Every organization has a wolf in sheep's clothing from time to time, all right? It seems like that anyway. Somebody that is directly moving to see you fail. But can I tell you something honestly? I think that's very rare. I think more contrarian voices come from concern. 99.9% of them. If very rarely does a leader have to face a wolf in sheep's clothing. That's just really out there for the destruction of the organization or the destruction of you as a leader. That's pretty rare. Usually concern for the organization, concern for the future, those things birth discontent in misalignment, right? So they see you going one direction as the leader, and they see something usually, a lot of times, let's hear me on this, they see something that can drive the organization forward in a good way, and their voice isn't being heard. That misalignment causes a conflict. And so if a humble leader can realize and can go on the presumption that the contrarian voice, that contrary voice is coming from concern and not ill will, not malintent, then it puts us way further down the road in mitigating the conflict. So always remember, concern is the base for most conflict organizationally. So what are you willing to learn from that? Are you willing to learn something new? Because look, I'm going to tell you something here. Your aha might be in the contrarian voice. Listen, hear that again. Your aha might be in the contrarian voice. People see ways to drive your organization forward in a better way. And when conflict comes, and if conflict is based in concern, there might be some good ideas there. And if all you're willing to do is get on the defensive and drive your organization forward based on what you perceive as the best way to lead, and you don't listen to the contrarian voice, you might miss the next transformational step in your organizational leadership. So remember, be humble, listen, because what are you willing to hear in the contrarian voice? That's a good question to ask yourself. Am I willing to hear something? They may be 99.9% toxic and vile, and their confrontation style may not be what you agree with, and it's immediately off-putting, and you want to really dive in and get head-to-head with that guy. But if you'll stop and take a humble stance and listen, that 0.01% might actually give you some valuable next steps to drive the organizational forward, the organizational culture forward. And so, listen, humility says conflict comes out of concern, and I'm willing to listen for maybe some key points that can drive the organization forward. It's huge. And so that leads us kind of naturally into this very next point, which is listen. If you've seen my videos, I've done over 300 videos in 84 different countries, and leadership I just love coaching leadership, and so I do that all the time. And so you've probably seen, if you've followed any of that or you've seen any of that in the past, you've probably seen me do this. Take time out to take time out. I've said that quite a bit, but that visual representation of the timeout sign that we see in every football game or whatever we watch, right? It means something to me as a leader, right? It means that I need to take time out to listen to my people. Now, organizationally, you can only listen to so many. I don't know how big your organization is, but any one individual can only lead 100, 125 people really successfully and well, and can only have a direct voice to that many people. But when you grow beyond that number, you can have listeners, right? Leaders that have their finger on the pulse of your people and can listen to you and add value to them by listening to them. And then they can speak into you and into your leadership. But if you're organization of 100 or less, there's no reason for you not to have direct listening, direct attention given to your people. Because here's where my little timeout for timeout comes in. If a voice cannot travel vertically to you and be heard by you, what happens? It goes everywhere else in the organization. So that T is a dangerous T. It's a blockage of communication. Your people need to know that if they have a concern, before it becomes conflict, if they have a concern or a word for you to drive the organization forward, and it can't rise to you or to one of your leaders that can give it to you, right? If their energy, their concern, their idea is blocked, it goes laterally to everybody else in the organization. If you've got a volunteer organization and you're troubled with gossip and you've got issues with your direct reports speaking about your leadership, or you've got factions within your organization that are vying for control of various things, I promise you this, it's a communication problem. If you'll find the influencers and you'll give them direct access to you, and you listen to them, you'll defer a lot of that lateral conversation in your organization, and it'll definitely help you. It might just completely remove the conflict, but it'll definitely drive your organization forward as you develop a communications plan that allows you to listen. Right? Be an active listener. So let's talk about active listening a little bit. Give your full attention. I'm terrible at that. So many of you guys know that I have been a law enforcement chaplain for 15 years. So I take on a lot of those tendencies. I always sit against the wall in the back of the room where I can observe the entryways to a restaurant, if you will. When someone walks in the room, somebody will engage me and be talking to me. If I speak at a conference, people are around me and they're talking to me, and my eyes dart around all over the place. I really have to watch that. I really do. It's hard for me because my eyes are darting over and summing people up. Are they safe? Are they a threat? That's just my tendency, my nature. And my wife's aware of that, and she'll tap me on the back when I'm not giving my full visual attention to the person that I'm speaking to. It's so important, especially when it comes to conflict, because if you're not giving your full attention, then you're back to what we said under humble. There's no mutual respect. It's not safe for them either. When there's no mutual respect, you need to zone in on them, give them your full attention, and let them know that you're listening to what they're saying to you. Body language is important. Again, I reference my emotional intelligence talks, but your body language and their body language. Self-awareness says, I'm aware of the way my body is presenting to you, right? So much of our face expressions can contradict what we're saying, right? We can even speak in ways that are affirming to someone, but our body language is saying we can't even stand being around them. We just want out of the room. So we got to be in tune with our body language. Not only that, you as the leader, you are responsible. And yes, I say responsible to be able to read their body language. Because look, let me share something with you. Even if they're angry at you, even if this is conflict that's coming, there is a subjection to your authority. You're the authority, and that's why they're upset, is because you're the authority and and you've made a decision or an action or something in your personality, who knows what it is, but they're upset because you're their leader and they have to submit themselves to you. But the way that plays out in confrontation is not healthy, because they're trying to honor that authority that you have. So they'll start in maybe a softer tone, or they'll start building their case, and they'll start saying all these reasons before they get to the actual point of what they're trying to say. And so you need to read that as the leader, and you need to remember safe and humble, right? Safe, humble leaders listen for the win. Okay. You need to be able to make it safe for them and say, hey, John, hold on. You got this thing building. Let's just cut to the chase, because I really respect you and I want to hear what you have to say. So rather than them spending 5 minutes trying to build their case, and you're trying to figure out what they're trying to say to you, just give them the permission to cut to the chase, to say, hey, this is what it is. They're honestly, subconsciously, what they're doing is they're trying to honor your authority, and they're trying to come in and make a case for what they have to say. But as a leader, you can grant them permission to say what they have to say, and then they can backfill. It's the opposite of what we talked about earlier in making it safe. You want to get to the end of the story first, and then you want to backfill. That creates a safe environment. It creates an environment in where conversation can better take place. Okay, so body language. Watch your body language and be astute to their body language. All right, and then listen for touch points. Look, the touch points are important because they actually even play into the earlier point we made about finding your aha in the contrarian voice, right? If you're actively listening at such a level that you're looking for little touch points that you can, a touch point is something that you would throw back at them to assure them that you're listening to them. But in your active listening, as you're looking for touch points, that's where your aha might come in, right? So let's say John is just spouting off 150 different things, right? And then all of a sudden you grab onto one of those that makes sense. And say, John, whoa, hold up. That point you just made about communication at the secondary level, that is awesome. Hey, what I need you to do, I agree with you 100% on that. What I need you to do is I need you to schedule a time with me where you and I can talk about that, because that could really transform things here. And see, what you've done is you've found a touch point. You've instilled in them that you were intently listening, because you're listening to the minutia, to the details. And not only that, you want to empower one of those points to drive the conversation forward. And so that goes a long way to create a safe environment, to show that you're humble, and most importantly, to show that you're an active listener and that you care about what they have to say to you. And then validating perspectives. Listen, let the person know that you validate them. And you see, here's the thing about perception. Let me tell you, you have to address perception as a leader. You might hear somebody say something to you, or they may say something to you directly, or it's out there buzzing around laterally, like I said earlier, and it's completely off. It is completely off. Maybe you said something in an address that you made, and it was misperceived and it was off. Now you have two choices. You can address it and say, they're wrong. That's not what I meant. And it's over. It's done. That's not what I meant. So get over it. You can take that approach, and in some twisted or weird way that may actually work. But the better, more mature approach addresses the perception. Hey, I'm sorry you perceived that in what I said. That is not at all what I intended to convey. Here's what I intended to convey, and I'm sorry that it was a misperception. I didn't even think that could be perceived that way. But here's what I intended to say. Right? So you're validating perspectives. And in the situation where you've got that contrarian voice right in your face and that they're just letting you have it, being an active listener and to being able to validate that perception of anything, just grab onto something and validate it. It shows them that you're actively listening. Hey, whoa, John, you know what? That's a perspective that I hadn't considered before. And you know what? You're right. I think I can grow if I can understand that perspective a little bit. So help me with that, because what I hear you saying is this, and tell me, give me more information there. You're validating their perspective. Again, you're just diffusing the situation. Here's another thing about that. If I can just be frank, most people, now think about human nature. Most people have this one nugget. This is what they want to say to you, right? They're upset with you, and this is the nugget. This is what they want to get at. But what do they do before they confront you? They think of 150 other little tic-tac issues, because the 150 little tic-tac issues give them momentum, right? So in other words, I want you as my leader to know this, but you need to know this is wrong, and 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 all these other things are wrong too, because there's a sense in people who are not skilled at negotiation or not skilled at confrontation to just inundate. I'm going to make my point why this is valid. And they'll have those, like I said, those tic-tac issues along with it. Once you validate a perspective, here's the thing. This is classic conflict mitigation. Once you validate a perspective, the receiver or the contrarian voice releases all the tic-tac issues. They just fall away. You don't even have to deal with them, because this is at the core of what they want. They want to be validated around this core. And if you can validate that perspective or give credence to that idea or empower that idea, then everything else falls away. And not to mention, this does too. This may be a process because this is the main thing, right? This may be a process, but all this other stuff that was superficial that they had put around it, all this satellite stuff just to make their point and to give more weight to it, it just falls away. It's unimportant to them. So a lot of times as a leader, when we don't validate perspectives, we end up dealing with 150 different little tic-tac issues that come to harm us, when all we had to do is validate a perspective that's birthed out of concern for the organization. And it just all kind of falls apart. It all all that contrarian opinion and voice and ammunition just hits the ground. All right. So now let's talk about the win. Look for the win. And look, this is not what you think it is, right? This is not look for the opportunity to pummel them and look for the opportunity to take your perspective and push it through and push it over the top. It's not that at all. This is looking for how you can give them a win, right? And because look, let me tell you, you will never end conflict if the other individual has no hope of moving the line. We all know that. We've all dealt with customer service people that are immovable on the phone, and we'll hang up the phone and say, I'll never buy that product again. I will never go to that store again. I will never shop from that online site again, because there was no resolution in the conflict whatsoever. And if you just have the same people constantly hitting you, it's because you've failed to look for the win. Here's my encouragement to you. Look for the win. But here's the caveat to that, is that you have to look for concessions that will not impact the greater movement. Remember, we're back to the goals that we talked about before. The goals of the organization trump everything. So if you know where you're going as an organization, you can't let the win take you away from that. That's obvious, but you can concede a win that's in alignment with it. And so as you're listening intently, right, you're an active listener, you're listening to that person, and you find that nugget, you can pull it out and you can say, man, look, you're right there, right? And that just allows them to move that line just a little bit in their favor. It's huge. It just dissipates. Conflict just dissipates. You may only give them 5% of the 100 they're asking for, but that 5% will dissipate the conflict. And that 5% has literally no ramifications to the forward momentum of the organization. See, that's key. You're not gonna concede on something that changes the direction of your organization. You're just not going to do it. But the active listener that's humble, that's made the environment safe, and is listening for the win, can latch onto that one thing John says and say, whoa, John, that is amazing. Wait, stop. What you just said is so smart. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to take 2 or 3 guys. Here, take Jim and take Bill, and take those guys and huddle up together, give them that idea, and let's work on it, because that's brilliant. And you've given them a win that completely dissipates the other 95% of their concern. Always look for the win. Safe, humble leaders listen for the win. Hey, I want to make one other kind of recommendation. I want to talk a little bit about trust here. And it's a book I need to share with you. It's Stephen M.R. Covey's The Speed of Trust. If you have not read this book, along with the Carrie Patterson books, these have to be in your library. They're great books on trust. Stephen Covey, you all know the name Stephen Covey. This is his son, Stephen M.R. Covey. And he talks about trust in such a profound way here. But here, let me cut to the chase for you. There's 2 things that I really want you to take away from this book. That with increased trust comes increased speed in an organization. You and I know that to be true practically. When they trust you as the leader, you can move pretty quick. You can move things. But with distrust, things slow down. And so that's the main premise of the book. But then he's got this converse kind of truth in there as well, that with increased trust, costs lower, right? There's lower costs with increased trust. And the converse is also true. With lower trust, cost and expenditures go up in an organization. So The Speed of Trust by Stephen M.R. Covey. I'd love you to read that. So that's it. Like I said, short and sweet. I want you to have that one simple takeaway. Safe, humble leaders listen for the win. And also, hey, do me a favor. follow my Facebook page, if you will. I post these videos there. If this was of help to you today, I don't monetize anything. I really don't. I do this because I love leadership and I love coaching leaders. And so my Facebook page is facebook.com/BrRickCurtis. And if you would just like that page and read first, there's a read first option. Click, that'll make sure it comes onto your timeline. But again, facebook.com/BrRickCurtis. And also in that forum, I'm live streaming there right now, but in that forum, I'll take your questions as well. I'm available to coach your people as well. So let me know if I can do that via Zoom or Ring Central, Skype, something like that. And I would normally do a Q&A period here, but for now, just if you would ask any questions under the live stream here at BR Rick Curtis, that'd be great. And I'll try to answer those online. Thank you very much. God bless and take care.
Welcome to the fire. 'Cause the bigger they are, the harder they fall. You build your fortress and I'll climb your walls. You got your armor, I see your flaws.